And welcome back to the Michigan Insider here on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA The Ticket, online at WTKA.com. We await Sam making the transition from one set of equipment to the other, but it is time for the MGoBlog Roundtable here on this Thursday morning. So we say good morning to the fellas. Good morning to Brian Cook. Brian, how are you?
I'm good. I'm well.
Good to see you. Good correction on the grammar there. I appreciate that. Good morning, Craig. How are you?
I'm either good or well, whichever one is grammatically correct.
And Seth?
I don't know if this is a political statement, but I'm doing great.
All right, that is just being great is fine. It's not a political statement. I mean, I guess in theory anything could be put into, but that's not the case here. So
I don't want it to be misinterpreted.
I understand.
All right. Well,
Well,
you're begging someone to misinterpret you. So,
and as we just said good morning to the fellows, we bring Sam in as well, and so we say good morning to Sam, and Sam will take it away.
you got glasses.
Yeah, man. Look, they are blue light glasses. You got to have these when you stare at the screen as much as I do.
All right.
My eyes have been, bothering me and getting headaches. And it's like, my wife got me these glasses. So, and I probably need glasses anyway, but definitely when I'm looking at the screen as much as I am, these have been doing the trick for me. I don't know if you guys use
No.
glasses ever.
No, my eyes are just always tired, so that maybe that's the problem.
Yeah, man. It's definitely doing a thing for me right now. But good morning, fellas. Glad you could join the show as always here on the MGoBlog Roundtable. As of course, Noah does not want me to go on the air without him chiming in, but I want you guys to chime in with your opinions on the completion of the defensive coaching staff. I know it's wait and see. I understand there's a lot to be determined. There's much we don't know. But based on what you learned about as far as reading their backgrounds and bios, what do you think these guys are going to bring to the table?
I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of, you bring a guy from the NFL, there's always some questions about whether he's adapted to the college game. But, people had those questions about Juwan Howard too. So it's not a death knell. And then, you have a guy like Jeff Hafley, who's at Ohio State for a year and then has done a fairly good job as Boston College's coach in 1 year too. So, in most situations, you're able to go and like, oh, this is Don Brown's resume. This seems like a good resume. But here, it's a position coach, and there's not really a whole lot to say about position coaches, even when they're coming from the college ranks. So I know Ira mentioned that one of the guys had recruited Rashad Bateman to Minnesota.
Yeah,
so
that's Lindquist.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was, if you aren't familiar, I don't know how they did it, frankly. Because now I understand how they got him initially, because he's not Atlanta. He's, I don't know if it's like Central Georgia or South Georgia, but he's not in the, he's not one of the city kids. So, but he blew up at the scene. And by the time that happened, Georgia, Florida, the big time SEC schools were all trying to get him to stay home. And he stuck with Minnesota on the strength of that relationship. And talked to Ryan Burns about it. He's like, I think they got like 4 or 5 guys from Georgia that year, and he was responsible for all of it. Freaking Minnesota, which is why I said in a response to someone on Twitter about it, it's like, yeah, he got all those Texas guys at Texas A&M, but can he get any guys to come north? I said, well, he probably won't get as many guys as he got at A&M, but if you can get Rashad Bateman to come from Georgia to Minnesota, I have some hope, Brian.
Well, yeah, and these guys are all familiar with each other. This is the way it works. So I think you'll have a coherent staff that has a coherent vision for the defense, which I don't know if we really did last year because of some circumstances outside of our control. So, we'll see where it goes. It's they're not going to be able to change the personnel that much. Maybe they'll get some transfers in. Maybe they'll be able to coach some guys up, but it's a long road back from what last year's defense had turned into.
Yeah, they got to be in the portal. Go ahead, Craig.
I'm sorry, Sam. My thinking is this. These guys, and including Mike Hart, have a certain similarity. And the similarity is they're all young, and they all played in the NFL, or have not played, or have NFL experience. And so it strikes me that Harbaugh, first of all, has taken, vis-a-vis the athletic department, a sort of a Godfather offer. I mean, Ward Manuel negotiated, in my opinion, a great deal with Harbaugh in terms of the athletic department, and good for Harbaugh for taking it, and to some extent, doubling down on the pass line on his own ability to turn the ship. And so what he's done is a clever thing in my mind by bringing very young guys in. And that's that, okay, maybe this year isn't going to be so great, but we're just going to freaking kill it on the recruiting trail. And we're going to show that even if this year things aren't as good as we might prefer, that there's going to be this light at the end of the tunnel coming, and it's going to be coming with young guys, NFL experience, who can kill it on the recruiting trail. And so what I see Harbaugh doing is sort of being very future looking in terms of who comes into the program, as opposed to obsessing about, well, what will it look like this year? And to me, that's all good, because I think, anything they can do this year that's positive, I don't think fans as a whole are expecting much, to be honest. And so, to me, this is sensible. It's been smart by Harbaugh, and so the whole picture to me looks better than it did, say, a month ago. But just my opinion.
Seth?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Craig that, like, he's Harbaugh, what you want him doing right now, right? Like, chances are either he's going to have a great season this year or he's gone, because they have the buyout's not so tough that they can't get rid of him now. So what you want out of Harbaugh is to set him up for the future, if either himself or has set up the next guy, because Michigan's not going to compete with Ohio State this year. But there's a question of whether they could build a program 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the road that has a shot, right? And if you want to build that program, if you want to set up for the future, you need to get some players on this team. And I think that's one of the things Mo Linguist, I don't care what year it is, if they make that hire any day of any year, that's a good hire, right? That's the kind of guy you want to get. The year in the NFL, I think people are overrating. He's only been in the NFL 1 year, literally 1 year and 1 week. And before that, he was Texas A&M. Before that, he was Minnesota. He's been at Iowa State, Buffalo. He's been 10 different places in the last 20 years. And, that guy's seen a lot of things for a young dude, and he's out there. That's like a Sharon Moore kind of hire. I don't know anything about Mike McDonald, but if you're replacing Don Brown, hopefully John Harbaugh saw something in this guy and said, hey, you need to take him. And then Mike Hart, I love that pick, because Hart's the kind of guy who can survive a regime change, right? Like, you can switch head coaches and Hart will still be here. You can switch head coaches 3 more times and Hart could still be here. And he's got some potential for, a head coach or something in the future as well. So I think Hart's a guy that you want around the program and being part of your program, being part of what you sell to people in the future.
I just need Hart to recruit a guy and call him Mike Hart, but fast.
I think he already said
Oh my God.
I think he already might have said that about Blake Corum.
Oh, man. Look, I think, Craig, you have me thinking about this in a different. I hadn't thought about it from the standpoint of, loading up recruiting with the idea being that you are going to be so good, you're going to show such a difference and an improvement in that area that if you fall short on the field, that it, maybe the promise of the future can be enough to keep you a part of it. I hadn't thought about it like that. I definitely think recruiting is very much in mind with the moves that he's making, but I just, I don't think that there's and this is my opinion, I don't think there's a concession about the present because of the portal. Now, whether they can be successful in upgrading, are you going to go and get, Justin Fields or, Sermon? Are you going to go getting some of the guys in the portal like Ohio State and Oklahoma have gotten? Probably not, right? But can you get upgrade? I don't think it's too much to ask for them to be able to get upgrades in the portal at crucial positions like defensive line, cornerback especially, to just really bolster those positions to the point where they aren't, just huge holes for them. If they can do that, then maybe they aren't competing with Ohio State, to Seth's point, but at least you're back to where you were before you fell off last year.
Yeah, I mean, is Sean Nua going to be recruiting any better than he did the last couple of years? Like, they completely undermined that guy by, basically letting it be out there that he wasn't coming back next year. And I think people assume that, and I think they lost some recruits because of that. And like Quentin Somerville, I don't care that much about, but like, they were out of it for George Rooks, and they were out of it for some other guys early on, because it didn't look like he was going to be retained. So then you retain him, and like, who are you bringing back? Like, who is he getting? Because like Antonio Shelton leaves Penn State and immediately goes to Florida. Michigan didn't even have a shot at that.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, and Sam's point is good too. I mean, I'm not saying the current season is already gone, but what I'm saying is when you look at this team, particularly the defense, you have to wonder, how they're really going to compete. And it seems to me that it is a legitimate point to say, hey, we still have time in the portal because there will be guys still coming through there. But I know Michigan picked up an offensive tackle, right, which I don't know much about. Willie Allen, is that right? I think he's here on campus now. Seems like he could be a good fit at right tackle for Michigan, but I don't know if he is or isn't.
Well, I think this needs to be, the kind of year. I think the portal is going to be on another level from this point forward, where it is absolutely like free agency, and hopefully Michigan can really treat it like that. I mean, they are going to be more limited than the competition when it comes to admissions, for sure, because that's just a fact of life. But it's not like they're going out and trying to. I mean, they got 2 JUCOs in our lifetimes, guys. So it's not going to be, they aren't going to have a when it comes to immediate, patches for holes like they have had in the past. They should be able to tangibly get some tangible help on the portal side of things. And as for Sean Nua, a couple of things. I mean, George Rooks is still out there. The word was that, and one of the things he was waiting to see was if Nua was going to be retained. So we'll see if that has some impact on him. And I know very publicly on the Rayshawn Benny front, he's been saying that he's locked into Michigan State. We'll see. I certainly think that Michigan is going to try to test that now that Nua has been retained. And then I guess what I'm most interested in seeing is what direction Sean Nua goes in without the parameters that were set by Don Brown. So, will he recruit more like 300 plus pounders as a result of the change? Assuming it's a scheme fit, I would argue he will. I think that was one of maybe the differences in philosophies, but you can't recruit something that doesn't fit the scheme, something that doesn't fit what your immediate boss wants. So I think that will be one. And then I think another thing that he's going to try to do is to try to jump into some more of these higher profile recruitments out west, especially on the Polynesian, with some of the Polynesian kids that Michigan was reluctant to jump in on. I think he's going to try to get more seriously involved in some of those things. Now, whether it works or not, to your point, Seth, remains to be seen. But those are some of the differences that I expect to manifest, at least as far as approach is concerned.
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple guys on that level that like Michigan had like an initial jump with when they hired Nua, and then this just kind of petered out so fast that it makes me wonder, like, what did we ever even have a chance? And I don't think that like anything.
And that's kind of the point. If do you jump in and say, we don't have a chance at this guy, and then you just drop off, or do you say, hey, if you're gonna recruit these guys, you got to understand that you got to be in it for the long haul. And it's not going to be easy. It's not going to look promising. And, you might go 1 for 10, but if you get one, shoot.
Yeah, I mean, I've been making this point for a while that like those recruits are expensive, and I don't mean it like in the the giving the players a McDonald's bag at Tennessee kind of way, but like it takes a lot of recruiting, and a lot of teams are going to be focusing on that because defensive tackle and cornerback are where you can really see, there's not a whole lot of 300-pounders who can get in the backfield, right? Once you can see that guy, then okay, that dude's going to be a dude at the college level as long as he's got what it takes to stick at the college level and whatnot. And then cornerbacks the same way, like they got it or they don't. You can see it right away. And those guys you can't play a tackle right away because he's got to learn a few things. But there's a certain kind of kid who has the athleticism and the size to play defensive tackle at an elite level. And every Ohio State and Alabama and Georgia are going to be targeting those guys before they target anybody else. And that's the hardest thing to recruit.
It's a great point, and we'll have to wait to see if they put that to what you're saying is the investment, the time investment involved in recruiting those guys. Are they gonna do that? That remains to be seen. But it certainly seems like the staff that they're putting together, that's one of the things they're going to do. We'll see. We'll see in the long run how it goes. But hey, wow, Singapore.
Oh, that's Raj.
As far as the roundtable is concerned, let's go over to the basketball side of things because people want to hear about some hoops. You guys get a chance to check out the IMG Montverde game?
I did, yeah.
What did you think of the Michigan commits in that game?
Well, actually, I watched their other two games. They were playing not Cavalry, so Wasatch or whatever. So Diabate is a guy who is a defensive eraser, and I kind of wonder about his shot if he's going to play the 4 because he had some opportunities to take some outside shots and he didn't really take advantage of those. So, but just in terms of like what he's going to look on the defensive end, I think Jaren Jackson is a pretty close comp because he's not that thick. He's not that thick, but Jesus, when he goes up to alter a shot, I mean, you got to climb a mountain just to get a ball over him. And Houston is a guy who he's being, it's high school, right? So like the offenses aren't getting you a lot of open shots, but when he gets an open shot, you can ring it up like that guy. And this is the cliche, but he is not just a shooter. He's 6'8". He's a rebounder. He's a defender. He can put the ball on the deck for a couple of dribbles, and because of his size, when he gets to the rim, he's going to be a good finisher. He's not a guy who takes over a game in high school and looks like he's, the number one player in the country. But if you just specifically watch him, you see that he's pretty much already an efficient college player who lets the game come to him.
Yeah, I like Houston's game a lot. I mean, he's a bit reminiscent to me of a young Glenn Rice. I don't think that's an impossible ceiling for him at all. If he's higher rated out of high school than Rice was, but that's a little bit of what I see there. I agree with Diabate. He has a limited offensive game away from the basket, but he's a phenomenal athlete. He could be at U of M for a couple of years, I think, even though he's a 5-star. I think it's possible because he will need to improve some on his offensive game. But defensively, athletically, running the court, he looks like the deal to me. So that's what I see. I love Frankie Collins also. I've mentioned that in the past, and I like this class generally. I would hope one of our guards will stick around to be the grease in the system next year. But we'll see about that.
Do I have to mispronounce Diabate as well? Is that the?
Yeah, did I mispronounce it? Yeah, sorry.
It wrong.
Yeah,
so far.
Diabate.
Yeah, but yeah, he's not sticking around more than 1 year. I know the NBA is going to want that kind of guy just as soon as possible, and I'm pretty sure that's his plan too. So I don't mind that. Like they're probably going to have to replace Franz next year, and Franz is a very hard dude to replace because he's got skills in so many different weird areas, right? Like the guy is super long and also plays like a guard and does so many things. And I don't think they're going to replace exactly what he brings, but I think that you can replace the production in general with these guys because you're going to get some floor spacing with Houston. You're going to get a lot of length and, just the sea of arms that Michigan's defense is in the front court is something that you're going to have a hard time replacing when you lose Livers and you lose Wagner, and you bring in these guys, and it's just going to get worse.
Well, Giabate is a guy who is developing fairly rapidly, and when he does take a perimeter shot, you can see that there's some potential there. So it's not like he can't do it.
Yeah.
But I think a good, like, if he could be a 30% 3-point shooter on open looks from the corner, because it's just, we've seen with Wisconsin this year that they've had a really hard time playing their bigs together. And I mean, Hunter Dickinson is back next year. Okay, that's a great situation at the 5, but can you play them together? And I think getting a little bit of outside shooting, and maybe Dickinson can provide that as well, because he took some threes in high school and has been developing as a shooter. He's got that elbow jumper, so if he can extend that to the 3-point line, those will be important for the idea of having the sea of arms.
The point about Wisconsin is really good. I noticed last night that seems like they're sort of moved Reavers into their 6th guy, and they're playing more wall with the other dude. I'm blocking on his name. The big guy.
Potter.
More Wall and Potter together than Reavers, and they've sort of shifted Reavers in and out of the lineup. So that's a fair point. Yeah.
Before we get to the break, just 2 more guys that I want your guys' opinion on. Of course, Jet Howard. What do you think of Jet, who almost certainly will be a Wolverine? And then again, I don't know if people really understand that Michigan is really in it for Jarris Walker. They are really in it. He is. If you look at the teams, how his top list of teams has changed since the fall, Michigan is the consistent. Is the team that has maintained like strong standing. Now it's Michigan, Auburn, and Carolina as the schools sticking out for him. He was, arguably the most physically impressive guy on the floor. What did you think of Jarris Walker?
So Walker's a man, like,
right?
Right. Remember Taco Charlton as a recruit, and you just looked at him and you're like, what is going on here? That's Walker.
That's right.
I mean, he's a guy who his shooting will determine whether he's more of a 4 or a 5, and that'll be his NBA upside. But, just in terms of an athlete who's going to be able to go down in the post on both ends immediately and be an effective player, that's him. He does have a shot. In high school, it's so hard to tell whether these guys are elite shooters or not, because most of the shots they take are total garbage. But yeah, he's a physical guy. And then Jet Howard, the guy he reminds me of is Tim Hardaway Jr. So he's mostly a shooter. He has the ability to make some plays. He's about the same size. Maybe he's a couple inches bigger even. But he's developing kind of an off the bounce game as well. He's a guy who, you can plug and play on the wing and just have him there for a couple years, and it's going to work out well.
All right. It is 9:35 on a Thursday. We'll come back on the other side with part 2 of the MGoBlog Roundtable and get into the current Wolverines as they bounce back from that loss to Minnesota last week. Obviously, a bit of a lopsided affair there. But then Michigan came right back, and they were back to their blowout ways against Maryland. We'll pick things up there and we'll return here on the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA The Ticket.
Clear on radio.
Did you guys see the Ziyah Holman run on the 4x400?
Yeah.
Oh,
unbelievable.
It's been on my timeline for, I think ABC News just picked it up. So
is that right?
Yeah.
She made the other runners look like they were standing still. I mean, it was unbelievable. And that was a 51.8 on an indoor track that's 200 meters. Are you kidding me? I mean, she's an Olympian.
Have to start calling Hunter Dickinson Ziyah Holmes' boyfriend.
Right. When we had James Henry on.
Yeah.
You guys talk a lot of recruiting here. When we got a 5-star coming in named Ziyah Holman. She is big time. This is what he was talking about clearly. But yeah, she walked down her competition. I said on the other day, not to disparage anyone, but she made them look like they were high schoolers.
Yeah. And do you know what teams those were? I'm not even sure what teams they were.
One of them was Ohio State.
Ohio State is good in track, great in track.
So.
I'm guessing the other one was Indiana or Wisconsin just because she was wearing red.
Yeah, well, they're good in track
Pretty
too.
sure it was Indiana.
It's a demoralizing thing to see her run. I mean, she just ran around like right by people around. She could have lapped them if.
I know.
In second place, she's going all out because she's like, I got this. I see first place in front of me, and then she just gets run by, and you see her like lose a good mile per hour. Just oh no!
And that's her first race as a freshman. I mean, and she ran, I think, a 600 meter. I think she won the 600 meters too in some unbelievable time, maybe a University of Michigan record time, and so she's a certain Olympian, I imagine, and it's pretty. I saw that. I thought it was fake at first. I thought this can't be real.
Yeah, she has a press conference today. I mean, I guess that.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
it's doing a media avail.
Yeah, it is captured some national attention.
Okay.
I told Ira, I immediately thought of, you remember the Ben Flanagan race from a few years ago? That's what every now and then there are these track stories.
Yeah.
that rise up, and it's like, wow, that is amazing. And Ben Flanagan, of course, wasn't Ben Flanagan an Olympian, Ira?
I believe he was.
So, this is cut from the same cloth. I think that she is tremendous. Hunter, meanwhile, all the big numbers he was putting up, it's amazing to see teams just say, that is the guy we are not going to let Hunter Dickinson beat us. And that's despite having shooters all around him. You got Isaiah Livers, who's a senior captain, Franz Wagner, who's a pro prospect, and other guys that can shoot out there. And it's like, hey, go ahead, do you. This freshman is more dangerous to us than you are.
Yeah, well, it didn't work. It didn't work out for Maryland very well because Michigan hit 12 to 24 threes and
back on the radio at about 15 guys.
Yeah,
12 to 21 if you only count the rotation guys.
Okay.
And I don't know if Zeb counts as rotation.
No, that's relevant. That's certainly
Zeb
relevant.
now officially counts as rotation.
Stand by for radio, guys.
Right.
All right, back on the radio in 5, 4, 3.
And we are back here on the Michigan Insider Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, online at WTKA.com. Sam Webb, Ira Weintraub on the other side of the county, and the roundtable crew is with us, Brian, Craig, and Seth. Now, here's the thing, guys, as we watch this Michigan team continue through the Big Ten and mostly run roughshod over it. I know they lost to Minnesota. I remember talking to Tim McCormick about it before the game. He said they're going to lose this game. The energy is not going to be the same. He didn't even know Eli Brooks wasn't going to be available for the game. That just compounded matters. And Minnesota had that game circled. But an element of that game and an element of, say, the last few games, teams saying Hunter Dickinson is our primary defensive objective. Stopping him. We are going to go all out, and we're going to double on the catch. I mean, we're going to blitz that guy. And if the other guys beat us, they beat us, which is just a really curious thing to me, guys. I mean, I know Hunter's been good, but I think I would change it up a little bit more. I would vary it a little bit more because of the weapons that Michigan has around them, but they just total disregard for that. They are committed to stopping Hunter Dickinson. And while that worked for Minnesota, certainly didn't work for Maryland.
No, and there's a big difference between Liam Robbins and the WMU transfer for Minnesota who goes 6'8", and the guys Maryland is trying to double with. So those guys, the center is 6'8", the guy coming over is 6'5", and Hunter can just see over him, and the passes he's getting out are not going to get batted like they were against Minnesota. And so you have a situation where if you kind of disregard a couple of shots late that were in Ken Palm time, you're talking about a 12 to 22 performance. And on the season, Sean D. Brown shooting 39%, Livers is 44, Smith is 46, Wagner is 34, Brooks is 37. So everybody on the court, once you get around the horn, none of those guys can be sagged off of. And so you're in this recovery mode. Like at one point, poor Daryl Morcell, Daryl Morcell is trying to close out on Livers and gets driven by and is just collapsed in a heap. And there's the attempted jam by Wagner because he's able to attack a closeout. And Hunter Dickinson scored 3 points in this game, but there was no question when he didn't play the last 13 minutes what was going on. It wasn't he was playing poorly. It was that Juwan Howard had 13 minutes against a Big Ten foe where he was like, well, let's just try some weird stuff out.
But I guess I wonder, can you keep that up if you're the Big Ten? Because Brian, I think you laid it out perfectly. I mean, if that's how you're going to play, they're going to be getting looks moving forward like they got. And even against Minnesota, they got some open looks that they didn't knock down. But if you're going to continue to give all those guys clean looks like that, that just seems like a recipe for more, for more lopsided affair. And I guess they were getting blown out when Hunter Dickinson was going off too. But this doesn't seem like it's going to be an elixir to what Michigan.
The interesting thing for me, Sam, is the big picture of this. I mentioned this. You mentioned before we left about how in high school games or that, or maybe it was Brian, that all you see is bad shots. I mean, bad shots are more ordinary than not. And this Michigan team, 2 weeks ago, Isaiah in a press conference, I think I mentioned this, talked about how forcing the ball can kill a team and that it destroys the team synergy. This week, Mike Smith said, no one player can own a game. For a team to succeed, there has to be a shared ownership of games. And I thought, wow.
That's philosophical.
Yeah, not only is it smart, it's completely true. And that when a team buys into the fact that, hey, we all own this game, in this particular game, and basketball in general, you got a whole different thing going on. And I don't, and I'm watching a Michigan team that pretty much lives up to that and does that on a week by week basis. And so I love that from Mike Smith. Now, next week, we're going to see Sean V. Brown. You know what he's going to do? He's going to refuse to say anything. He's just going to say, look at my beard. What is this homage to? That's all he's going to say. And it's going to be obvious what it's homage to. Dead communist martyrs. And so it's going to get reduced more and more to this sort of equation that when players own the game, you always have a chance to win. Now, the Minnesota game, this was like a perfect storm of everything conceivable going wrong. We got an officiating crew who decided they were going to allow a lot of clutch and grab on the perimeter. Okay, it wasn't an unfairly officiated game, but it was a style that was going to make it difficult for us. We had Eli being out, and you had a Michigan team that didn't shoot the ball very well, and yet still, with about 12 minutes to go, we're only down about 4 or 5 points when we had a complete meltdown with a lineup that wasn't, I think, the best lineup for Michigan at that particular juncture. And when Sean D had sort of made a three, made a steal, got the basket, we're right back in the game, and then it frittered away. But, I really do like this team. We'll see. The next 4 or 5 games will tell all, because now the schedule's harder, I think, and whether they can continue to play at this level. Most sites or most people who look at this have Michigan as a 1 seed right now. KenPom has Michigan as the number 4 team in the country. We'll see. But I like the attitude. I like the feeling of the team. I like the intelligence of this team. And I like how they talk about it in press conferences.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the danger of the schedule coming up, but Michigan's only got 1 play against Iowa. They only got to play Illinois once. They got 2 games against Michigan State. They get another one against Northwestern. They get a couple games against Indiana. Rutgers is a tough out, but so is everybody in the Big Ten. I don't see the schedule coming up being that much more daunting than some of the guys they've faced already. And like that Dickinson matchup that worked so well against Maryland, that's going to work against Ohio State. Their front court's not any larger than Maryland's, and Michigan State's front court is a disaster. So, there's a lot of wins left to get out there, and I don't think they. They could probably lose 2 or 3 more games and still, win the Big Ten at this point.
What do you think about Purdue? Yeah, because Brian, I think it was his line. It was a great line. He said, "Playing Purdue's like playing a ball of knives," and wasn't that your line? I think it was.
That doesn't sound familiar, but
maybe not. But I thought it was yours. But it was a good line, and it sure is true. And and they've got Travion Williams, who's a top 10 on Ken Palm.
That's all usage. Like he's just he's a 35% usage guy, which is incredible. He's one of the best passers as a center I've seen in the last 10 years in the league.
Yeah, they need. I heard Matt Painter talking about this. They need better starts. He's second half. He just has been a beast for them, according to Painter. He just needs them to get off to come out of the gate. Do it from the tip. And they'll be better. And I think that will absolutely be the case. If it's a Michigan team on the other side, it's just this guy takes it to another level, goes to another gear, which is saying something this year. But he was clearly a major factor in them beating Michigan State when I still how did Michigan State lose to Purdue? And I'm looking at Purdue and how are they?
They put Joey Hauser on Trevion Williams for like a whole half.
They were down 13. Without much offensive weaponry. I mean, I look at this Purdue team and I say Matt Painter's had far more talented teams than this.
Yes.
In my opinion, which is why I think this might be his best coaching job, because he has them in the upper tier of the Big Ten. And I'm looking at the guys on the court and I'm like, man, they don't look like they should be here, in my opinion.
Well, Matt Painter's a great coach. I mean, they've got really no point guard I don't know what this Edey guy is. He's 7'4". He's a monster. He can't really move, but they're getting some value out of him. I mean, a lot of Purdue depends on Sasha Stefanovic.
Uh-huh.
I mean, he can be a great shooter, and he's a streak shooter. When Sasha Stefanovic is hot, I mean, he's tough. But I've seen him in games when he clunks them too. So, I mean, a lot of their team depends on him. But you're right, Sam. It doesn't look like a great team. Stefanovic is a shooter. I mean, Travion can really play. But otherwise, you say, well, why are they? But they've won their last 4 games, and they've won them against some good teams.
They've won some very narrow games.
Narrow games, close games. True.
Yeah, but it was impressive that they came back against Ohio State, because that was another Ohio State game where they went against a team that's very center focused, and then Trevion Williams picks up 2 fouls, both of which were kind of questionable fouls, and all of a sudden that guy's on the bench, and they're Purdue playing Zach Edey against another team, and I think that they just been hot shooting, but then I looked at this, they were 5-20 in this game. So it felt like they were hot watching the game, and then I go back and look at the box score, and they were hot from 2, I guess. And that's really been their story, that they're making pull-up jumpers in this team.
They in the Michigan State game, they won shooting 4 of 24 from 3.
Well, but they also won with 55 points. So
yeah, I know, but they still, in the end, they still won. And so, and it's the point of this particular Purdue team, and Painter teams perhaps in general, but particularly this one, is they're a ball of knives, and they're going to come out and they're going to play hard and nasty and tough, and they're always hard to beat, even when they don't have the most talented team. So it'll be an interesting game, tough game for Michigan, I think, and particularly in West Lafayette, where I don't think they've lost this year either. A lot like Minnesota, who I don't think has lost at their place this year either.
So Painter has a dilemma here, is that Trevion Williams is their offense. So, and when he goes out with foul trouble, it's a problem for them. So they kind of have to double Hunter Dickinson, but Trevion Williams himself, he's listed as 6'10". I don't buy that. I mean, that guy's 6'8", right?
Yeah.
And then they don't have the kind of second 6'9" guy who's really going to bother Hunter Dickinson, except for Aaron Wheeler. And Wheeler only plays half the time because he's still a wreck offensively. So
Yeah.
for big chunks of this game, they're going to have to make a choice about probably an ineffective double on Hunter Dickinson and getting rained on like Maryland did, or exposing Trevion Williams to fouls that they might not be particularly able to deal with.
Let's take a couple of questions from the crowd before we get out of here, from the viewers on Facebook Live, Twitter, and YouTube. Start off first with Robert Goulder. Mike Smith, Shondi Brown, do they stay? What do you guys think?
I think Smith has a real good chance of staying because, he came from Columbia. He hasn't really had the major college basketball experience. There's no fans this year. He probably isn't going to get a whole lot of pro interest because of his size. So I if I had to bet, I bet he's back. Shondi is a kind of a different animal because the way he's playing, I could see him catching on an NBA roster as a 3-and-D guy, right? Like,
Yep.
That's a guy who could come off the bench for 8 to 10 minutes a game in the NBA, and you'd be fine with it. So
I think that's perfect, Brian. I mean, he reminds me of Brian Bowen. A guy who can really move his feet, really play defense, but still hit the corner three and hit it really well. And the corner three doesn't get longer in the NBA. And so, I think there's a place for him in the NBA. Whether he wants to do, I don't know. He seems to be having fun. I mean, I've never seen a kid who has more fun on the court, so.
If you're Michigan, it's like, man, absolutely want that guy back, right?
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like any of the three seniors, like if you look at the rotation next year without Franz, like there's definitely a spot for one or two of those guys to come back and play a major rotation role.
Well, I assume Isaiah's gone too. Yeah.
I mean, I could see Eli coming back. Like he likes school as much as I did.
All right, let's get another one in here, guys. This one from Austin Cooper. Do you think the size of the team is the blueprint for future teams, or is it just Juwan Howard working with what is there? I love the size and athleticism, especially when it's like Wagner and Livers who can both shoot. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think that the team is going to be big going forward. Like with Frankie, he's one of these kind of pint-sized point guards too, but he can jump out of the gym, so his effective size is a lot bigger than his actual size. And then everybody else, Buffkin's 6'4", Shetter is 6'8", Moussa Diabati's giant, Houston's giant. And I think you're going to see that going forward. Is that Michigan? This is probably the least athletic they're going to be under Juwan Howard, just because of the way he recruits, and they're going to be a very large basketball team going forward.
Right.
Yeah, that seems. I agree. It seems to be the direction he's going. But Frankie, when fans see Frankie, the first time they see him go to the hoop, they're going to freak out.
Yeah.
Because I never saw anybody jump like that.
Yeah, and it's another reason why I really hope Mike Smith comes back, because I guess watching him this year, I kind of thought, based on the description, his jump shot was further along.
No, it's not.
And it's going to continue to be a work in progress. So
our recruiting guy says that he's that Ipsy prep game was not entirely representative.
I'm going off of more than just Ipsy.
Me too.
That was my impression too. And he was like, he's not in the Xavier Simpson category. He has some upside there.
Yeah. I guess I could go for that, but still, I mean, all the reason for Mike Smith to be back next year if you can swing it. And I can't like you. It just makes sense for both sides. Let me throw this in there real quick. That's Zeke and
Bruce
Bowen.
Yeah.
Brian Bowen is Tuggs Bowen, who
right. Sorry. Correct.
For the Louisville deal, but yeah, Bruce Bowen, bow tie guy, San Antonio Spurs 3-and-D guy. Man, if I'm sure Shondi Brown would take that. Bruce Bowen. How long did Bruce Bowen stay in the league? Seems like forever.
18 million years.
Speaking of 18 million years in the league, Chad Henne this week.
Man. Talk about feeling old. I remember covering Chad Henne as a high school recruit.
You want to feel old? Do you know that there's a recruit named Jai Eugene Jr.? Like Craig's used to this. I'm not used to this.
I'm used to it.
Jai Eugene Jr. And he's the baby. He's the one. Oh, I know. You aren't.
Yeah, he's
He got away from mom. Anyway, he's the baby that when he calls Ron English up and he said, they got my mom a house and my dad a job and they're gonna take care. I got to take care of my baby. And English said, yeah, go to LSU, Jai. go to LSU. We can't match that, man. You know, and hell, I can't say that I would have told him the same thing personally.
Me too.
Well,
maybe we can take care
worked
of
out
baby.
for him. So
It sure did. So
sure did.
I don't know. Do you know how good is Jai Eugene Jr. supposed to be? I haven't.
I blanked out. I passed out after I saw his name, so can't tell you.
Well, fellas, another week in the books. Don't push buttons, Noah. Another week. You like Zeke's comment about Bruce Bowen, right? Another week in the books. We'll come back next week, and obviously we'll be breaking down more Michigan basketball. And then, of course, we'll see. You got any predictions on Michigan versus Notre Dame on the ice, Brian? Any difference from the last couple of matchups they've had?
So the last couple of series, the second series against Notre Dame has been an incredibly important series for Michigan to show their improvement going forward. They played excellently in the past 2 weekends, but Notre Dame can shut down anybody, and it's really important to get on the board first against them to make them play the game.
All right.
Yeah, I hate playing Notre Dame because the games are always ugly, and Brian's right. We got to score first to make their style of play, their trapping play, work against them.
Yeah, I mean they played so bad the first series. Maybe they're maybe Michigan's. Wouldn't be the first time a Mel team kind of came back against Notre Dame.
All right. That's it, folks. That is it. I gotta take care of a baby. So, thanks a lot for listening. See you next week, guys. Thanks for listening to the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA The Ticket, the official voice of University of Michigan Sports, Ann Arbor, a Cumulus station.
What a cutie. What a